World's best budget knife. Used by the American Army. That claim is spreading everywhere now because it sounds too good to check. A knife that costs almost nothing, supposedly beating blades 10 times the price, good enough for real soldiers to carry. But out here, a failed blade isn't a bad review. It's a bad moment at the worst possible time, cutting cordage in the dark, fixing something that has to hold. So we're testing every piece of this claim one at a time, and the biggest one is saved for last, because it's the one nobody can actually check. My name's Ranger Jack. I've outfitted backcountry clients on multi-day alpine and winter trips for 17 years, and I don't sell knives. I just have to trust the ones I hand out. Let's start with Claim 1. Claim 1. High-quality steel. That phrase is on the box, in the description, probably in the caption of the video that got you here. It sounds technical. It sounds like something you could go verify. Here's the problem. It doesn't actually mean anything on its own. Steel type matters, sure, but steel type without heat treat is like telling me a car has an engine without telling me if it runs. You can take a decent steel, treat it wrong, and end up with an edge that rolls the first time it hits something harder than a cardboard box. You can take a mediocre steel, treat it right, and get a blade that outlasts knives twice the price. High-quality steel is a marketing phrase sitting on top of a manufacturing process nobody's showing you. And that gap is where the failure lives. Not in a lab, but on the trail, the first time that edge meets actual wood instead of a demo target. And it chips or folds over instead of biting clean. Now, to be fair, this isn't a total lie. Some of these budget steels are genuinely fine for light use, opening packages, cutting rope, prepping food at camp. If that's all you're asking of it, high-quality steel might hold up just fine. The claim isn't false. It's just incomplete, and incomplete is exactly how marketing likes it. Here's the part that never makes it onto the packaging. Geometry matters just as much as the steel itself. A thin, well-ground edge on an average steel will outcut a thick, lazy grind on a fancier steel every single time, because cutting performance is mostly about how much material is actually meeting the wood or the rope, not what alloy that material happens to be. So when you read high-quality steel on a budget knife, you're reading half a sentence. The other half, the grind angle, the heat treat consistency from batch to batch, whether every unit off that production line gets treated the same way, or whether it's a coin flip, that half is the part that actually determines whether this thing holds up when you're depending on it. That's the easy one. The next claim is where it gets slippery. Claim 2. Holds an edge. This one's usually shown to you, not just told to you. A clean demo cut through cardboard, paper, maybe a tomato sliced paper thin for the camera, looks convincing. Here's the reality check. Cutting cardboard on a table and holding an edge through a real field task are two different tests, and only one of them is on camera. Cardboard is abrasive in a predictable, controlled way. Wood is not. Cordage under tension is not. A camp task where you're cutting the same material 50 times in a row in the cold with your hands already tired is not. That's spec and data cherry picking. The favorable cut gets filmed. The dulling that happens after task 40 doesn't. And the consequence isn't cosmetic. A dull blade at camp doesn't just work slower. It makes you push harder, which means more force behind an edge that's more likely to slip, which is exactly how people cut themselves. Not with a sharp knife, but with a dull one they're fighting. Fair's fair, though. For light EDC use, opening mail, breaking down boxes, a blade like this can hold up just fine between sharpenings. It's sustained field work where the gap shows up. And here's the part that's easy to miss if you've never actually run a blade through a full day of camp tasks. Dulling isn't linear. A blade doesn't go from sharp to dull all at once. It degrades in stages. And the middle stage is the dangerous one, because it still looks sharp, it still cuts, but it's already asking for more force than it should. That's exactly the stage where people stop paying attention to their grip and their angle, because the knife's still working. A demo video never shows you that stage, because the demo ends before it starts. Still cosmetic problems so far. Now we get to what can actually hurt someone. Claim 3. Battle-tested build, marketed with a lock mechanism that's supposed to survive anything. I want to tell you about a client of mine because this is the claim that started my whole habit of not trusting a knife until I've actually put it through what I'm about to put it through. Years back, I handed a guy on a winter trip a folder that used almost this exact language. Tactical, rugged, battle-tested, good-looking knife. Felt solid in the shop. He needed it mid-task, at altitude, real cold, doing something that actually mattered, and the lock didn't hold like it was supposed to. Nothing dramatic happened that day, but it easily could have, and that's the whole point. Here's the mechanism nobody puts in the ad copy. Cheap composite and plastic components behave differently in real cold than they do in a warm demo video shot indoors. They stiffen. They can bind or slip in ways they never do at room temperature. Battle-tested is borrowed authority. Military language slapped onto a product that's never actually been anywhere near a real test like that. And the consequence here isn't cosmetic like the last two claims. A lock that fails mid-task isn't an inconvenience. It's an injury risk. Full stop. To be fair, plenty of budget locks are perfectly fine for careful, controlled, room temperature use. The failure shows up specifically at the edges. Cold, wet, tired hands, real pressure. That trip taught me something I still use on every piece of gear I hand out now. I don't care how a lock feels when I test it, standing in a warm shop with clean, dry hands. That test tells me almost nothing about how it behaves 3 days into a cold trip when everything's a little stiffer, a little slower to respond, including the person holding it. A lock has to fail safe under exactly those conditions, not the easy ones, because the easy ones are never the ones that actually matter. That's the failure that started my log. And it's exactly the kind of failure this next claim is designed to distract you from. Claim 4, world's best. This is the one that sounds the most confident and means the least. Best at what exactly? Best edge retention? Best price to performance? Best ergonomics? Best for which task? In which conditions? The claim doesn't say, because it can't. There's no stated criteria here, which means there's no way to actually test it. That's not an accident. An unfalsifiable superlative is designed to feel true without ever being checkable. Now, I'm not going to tell you cheap automatically means bad. That's its own kind of lazy thinking, and I've seen budget gear outperform expensive gear plenty of times. But best isn't a performance claim. It's a marketing word doing the job a real spec sheet should be doing. Vague superlatives are annoying, but mostly harmless. Nobody gets hurt, because a knife called itself the best. Here's why this one works on people anyway, even smart, careful people. Confidence reads as evidence. If someone says, this is the best budget knife, flatly, without hedging, without qualifiers, your brain tends to fill in the missing proof on its own. Surely they wouldn't say it that plainly if it weren't true. That's not a knife problem. That's just how confident language works on all of us. The fix isn't complicated, though. Anytime you hear an unqualified superlative, ask the one question the ad never answers. Best compared to what? And measured how? If nobody can answer that, the claim isn't information. It's just volume. This next one is where the price comparison starts getting dishonest. Claim 5 beats knives 10 times the price. Now we're into price-value anchoring, and this is where a lot of viewers get genuinely misled because the comparison sounds so specific. 10 times the price, that's a real number. It feels measured. It feels fair. But nobody tells you which knife that comparison is against. Pick an overpriced, poorly made premium knife riding on brand name alone, and sure, a solid budget blade beats it easily. That comparison is true and useless at the same time. Here's what that 10 times number is quietly skipping. Expensive knives, the legitimate ones, aren't just paying for a name. They're paying for consistent heat treat across every unit, tighter tolerances, better lock hardware, real warranty support when something goes wrong. That's real cost, not hype. The danger of this claim isn't that it's completely false. Some budget knives genuinely do outperform bad expensive ones. The danger is it teaches you that price never buys anything real, and that's just not true. I'll put it plainly because I think this matters more than people give it credit for. Cheap can be smart, and expensive can be a scam. And both of those things can be true on the same shelf at the same time. What actually separates a good budget knife from a good expensive one usually isn't the price tag at all. It's whether the maker was honest about what you're getting and whether the thing was built to do the job it's actually sold for. A 10 times price comparison skips that entire question and replaces it with a number that sounds like proof. That's a marketing trick. The next one isn't even checkable, and it's the whole reason this video exists. Claim 6, used by the American Army. Here's where I need to be careful and honest, because this is the part where I could easily overstate my case just to make a better video, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you this claim is false. I can't confirm that, and neither can you from what's actually public. What I can tell you is this. There's no specific unit named, no sourced procurement record, no contract, no name attached to any of it. It's a phrase that gets repeated until repetition starts doing the work that evidence should be doing. That's authority claim laundering. Used by the military sounds like it comes with built-in vetting, like someone official already tested this thing under conditions worse than anything you'll ever put it through. But as stated, it's unverifiable, not disproven. Unverifiable, which is its own kind of red flag, because a real endorsement usually comes with specifics you can actually check. This is the same failure category as that lock mechanism a few years back. Big confident language. Nothing underneath it I can independently confirm. I've got a running mental log of every piece of gear that's let a client down, and before anything new goes on that log as trustworthy, I check it the same way. Can I verify this against something real? Something a person actually depended on? If I can't, it doesn't go on the log as true, no matter how many times it gets repeated online. And to think about why this particular claim was saved for the headline instead of the fine print. Steel type and edge retention are things a reviewer could actually go test with a sharpness gauge or a rope cutting rig. A lock mechanism you can put in a freezer and try yourself. But used by the Army, there's no test a regular person can run to check that from home. It's not that it's necessarily untrue. It's that it was chosen specifically because it's the one claim you can't independently verify, which is exactly what makes it so effective at the top of a title. The flashiest claim in this whole title turns out to be the one with the least behind it. So here's what actually matters when you're choosing a budget knife instead of chasing whatever claim is loudest. Look for a maker who'll actually disclose the steel type and the heat treat process, not just a buzzword like high carbon with nothing behind it. Look for a lock mechanism that's been shown holding up in real cold and real wet, not just in a warm studio. Match the knife to what you're actually going to use it for. EDC, kitchen, and field survival are 3 different jobs, and a knife built for one isn't automatically good at the others. Check whether there's real warranty or return support behind it, because that tells you whether the maker is willing to stand behind their own product. And when you see language like used by, endorsed by, or battle-tested with no specifics attached, treat it as noise. Judge the object in your hand, not the label on the box. None of that requires expertise, and none of it requires taking my word for anything, which is exactly the point. A steel type and a heat treat process are things a maker can either state clearly or dodge, and if they're dodging, that tells you something on its own. A lock mechanism is something you can test yourself before you ever leave the house. Open it, close it, run it cold, run it wet. See if it still feels the same. Use case match is just honesty with yourself about what you're actually going to do with the thing, not what you imagine you might do with it someday. And warranty support is the one signal that actually costs the maker something to offer, which is exactly why it's worth paying attention to. Nobody backs a product they don't trust. None of this requires you to trust me. It just requires you to stop trusting the loudest sentence on the label. Let's run it back quick. Claim 1, the steel, was mostly honest, just incomplete. Claim 2, edge retention, was a cherry-picked demo. Claim 3, the battle-tested build, was borrowed authority hiding a real injury risk. And I've seen exactly that failure happen to someone who was counting on me to hand him gear that worked. Claim 4, world's best, was a superlative with no criteria behind it. Claim 5, the price comparison, was true and misleading at the same time. And Claim 6, the military claim, the biggest, loudest line in the whole title, was the one with the least behind it of all 6. That's usually how it goes, not just with knives. The quietest claim tends to be the most honest one, and the loudest claim tends to be the least checkable one. It's worth remembering that pattern the next time you're looking at any piece of gear making big promises, not just this one. I don't sell knives. I don't have a sponsorship riding on this video. I'm not getting a cut if you buy the one in that title or the one I'd actually recommend instead. My job is putting gear in clients' hands and trusting it holds up when it matters. And that only works if I'm honest about what actually holds up, not what sounds good in a caption. That's the whole reason I run everything through the same log before I trust it. This knife included. So here's what I want from you. Tell me about a piece of gear you trusted because it sounded official, tactical, battle-tested, used by somebody, and then it let you down right, when you actually needed it to work. Everybody's got one of those stories, whether it's a knife, a jacket, a rope, doesn't matter. Drop it below. I read every one, and honestly, that's how my own field log keeps growing. One failure, one story, one claim at a time.